It's Brooke here, and I'm back with another tutorial. I'm in my grid journal again, and this is one of my favorite places to be. I think it's so easy to get in the zone, and I love the way that all of these little boxes end up coming together. They're little masterpieces on their own, but also the entire spread is just so pleasing to look at. I definitely find that I like to look at things in groupings and collections. Seeing many different things that are similar all together is really kind of fascinating to me. So I started out by drawing my grids, and I do have a free template that you can download for that if you would like. I'm going to put that down in the description below. I also put all the supplies that I use in the description. So if you're curious about things, make sure to check there first. If I missed anything, please don't hesitate to ask. So I'm getting started here, and one of the first very important things to do is break up some of the white space so that it's not so intimidating. I started with a Posca pen and just did some art marks, some loose little scribbles in a few different areas, not repeating the same mark over and over, but trying to get a little bit of variety in there. Next, I'm wanting a little bit more all over color down, and I'm using some high flow acrylic, which is like an acrylic ink, and spreading that around, adding a little bit of water and with my paintbrush and just letting things run. I'm being very careful as I do this step because I tend to kind of go crazy overboard with the water when it comes to acrylic ink because I love the way that it spreads out and the way that it looks. But for this inside of an art journal, I am trying to be cautious so that it doesn't get on all of the other pages. So that's just a word of caution for you. Next, I want to continue on with those layers. So I have some just scraps of paper here, and I'm using matte medium to collage down some different scraps and just get a little bit of that variety. These beginning steps, I always try to get those layers kind of building and moving, getting some different interest points, but I also know these beginning stages, a lot of this may end up being covered, and I'm okay with that. So when I first start out, a lot of times I'm a little bit tighter. I'm not as loose with my movements or as free. And so definitely be okay with things being covered up as you work. If you're too afraid to ever cover anything up, then you're not going to get the depth and dimension that you're probably looking for. Your items may feel a little bit flat and not have the depth that you want. And so it's kind of scary, but being willing to cover some stuff up is kind of essential to getting the results that you are looking for. I have a variety of collage pieces that I'm happy with, and so now I'm stepping up to my next stage here, and that's going to be adding black gesso. Now, I knew coming into this one that this is a technique that I wanted to try out, and it's a lot of boldness happening. Black gesso is a very take charge sort of paint, and it covers pretty much everything, super opaque, it dries quickly, but I wanted to play with the idea of having some of those lighter layers and those first layers showing through to some extent, that black gesso, and then how can I bring back in color on top of it? So if I were to do the black gesso completely first, kind of come back in and add some of that color, it would not show up over that black area as much. And so one of my biggest tips is to start trying to change the order that you normally do things. It's great if we have a system that we use to get good results each time, but in the end, it becomes a little bit expected and even predictable. And so changing things up and being willing to experiment and play and being willing to be okay if maybe it's not the greatest in the world. Being okay that the ability to explore and play means that you're willing to continue to learn and see what's going to be best, see what feels good, and there's always comfort in coming back to what you know works, but I do like to try to change things up. And so for this one, it was a definite intention up front to change the order a little bit. And I love the look of this bold black paint. And so it was a good thing to try here. Next up, I'm adding in some pencil scribbles. No journal page is complete without some pencil scribbles in my book. And so just adding those in real loose. Okay. Now that we have those layers so far, and I have the black gesso, I did dry it almost all the way, not completely. You can see in some areas now that I'm mixing in more color that the black is going to mix in, but I'm okay with that. I just didn't want it to be still so wet that it mixed too much. So I'm coming in now with more the color palette that I had chosen from the beginning and just putting that down in places. I want to come in over some of those black sections, so I don't need them to stay super, super bold, but I do want that black to kind of show through. And again, I'm being okay covering up some of those lower sections that I did in the first place, but I wanted to do some marks at the beginning with a pen and the Posca marker because it gives you different look than just straight all out color that's splashed on or marked on. And I like the lines that come through. So I'm going to continue to add these colors little bit by little bit, and I'll let them kind of mix as I go. I'm okay with those colors mixing. I can use my finger to apply, a paintbrush, a spatula, palette knife, so many different things. You can really play around with that. Once you're happy with the amount of paint and different colors that you added, you can go ahead and dry that with a heat gun or let it dry naturally. And now I'm coming back in and I need some more fine lines. I have more bigger areas of color. A lot of the markings that I had done before with the pencil and the Posca marker have been covered up, and that's to be expected. But now I need to add back in some of those small detailed lines. And so I'm having this white charcoal pencil and I'm going over some of those black sections and just the darker sections, I guess, in general. And I think it even highlights those areas even more. I like the scratchy look of it. I'm holding it really loose and just kind of letting my wrist be loose as I draw those on. All right, so I want some dimension on this page and a bit of contrast of color too. So I'm coming back in with this yellow color and I'm mixing it with some light molding paste. I'm just doing that with my palette knife, and this is going to make for a really texturized paint. It's going to kind of stick up off of the paper a bit. And so I'll have to make sure to give this enough time to dry before I ever close this journal, but that's to be expected for this. So I'm continuing to mix until I get the consistency that I want. You could also mix multiple colors like the multiple colors together to get the color that you want. I was pretty happy with that yellow color that came out of the tube, and I am then applying it with my palette knife, kind of messy, and then I have this wooden skewer, and I'm going to go in and take part of it out so that you can see the dark color from underneath come through that yellow section. So I love this. It's a way of bringing back in some of what we had before. It's a way of doing art marks and bringing in a lot of interest to the piece in multiple different ways. The color is different, but the technique is also very different than what we have done in the previous layers, so it's sure to stand out and kind of be the star. I'm going to continue to do this on the different blocks that I feel like need it, and you wouldn't have to do the exact same marks in each one. I liked the consistency throughout. I'm not doing the exact same shape of paint on each one. I'm kind of changing that up as well, and so I like the consistency of those marks. I left some of the squares so they didn't have any of the yellow in them. I didn't want it to feel too overpowering. If I were to do the same thing in every single square, it kind of takes the power away from it. And so I was trying to be a little bit judicial as I put that down. And next, I think it needs just a little bit of white gesso in a couple areas. It's going to act as highlights, but then also some art marks here with just my fingerprint. Your finger is probably one of the easiest tools that you have, and it's always on hand, joke intended. And so that's a great thing to be able to use. So I hope that you guys loved this art journal, grid journal spread. This is one of my favorites, I think, because of that molding paste and that texture. Another great way to use the molding paste is through a stencil, and that creates a really fun look. This is kind of the reverse feeling of that, as I'm taking some of the paint away instead of adding it in art marks. And last, I'm going to add just a few little black dots in here with my Posca marker, and then we're going to take a final look, and I hope that you guys enjoyed. I will see you next week, and have a good one.